Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today, I have Melissa Banks. She's an author, brand strategist, media personality, a speaker. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so this is great. I checked out your website. You're doing a little bit of everything. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your career and what you do?
Okay, I started my career over 26 years ago as an event planner. I love changing rooms into memorable experiences. I did that for a very long time. And actually, I did only that up until 2019, 2020, when the pandemic hit and other doors started opening. That's where the media stuff came in, and also where I started sharing my story. I shared my story on a stage in January of 2020, and I've been sharing it ever since because it was so powerful to others and to me. And that's when I realized our stories was there to share. So I share my story in speaking platforms and training platforms, and also in my books. You'll see I have several inspirational books out that I share because I want to pour into women to empower them to believe in themselves, and regardless of the circumstances that they're facing.
Why don't you tell us your story?
Okay, my story started actually I got married when I was 17 years old to the love of my life, who was a few years older than me, but also who became my abuser 6 months after we were married. So that's how it all began. It began with him controlling my mind. I believe that your mind is what starts or stops you, and when someone else controls it, they determine those things for you. I was married for over 17 years to that abuser and was abused almost every day of my life after that 6 months period. I have two sons. I raised my sons, and I had to learn who I was. I had to learn to speak again, really. I went through a whole period where I didn't speak at all. That led me to looking for a job. I didn't know what I liked, what I could do. I had to find confidence. And I was able to do that in different jobs that I had. And I found my way, I thought. And then the job that was my way to raising my kids, my way to get out, my way to education went away. We were laid off in one day, over 3,000 people. I didn't know what I was going to do. And that day, God told me that I was going to start a business. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know people who owned businesses. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew how to decorate. And that's where my entrepreneurial journey started. I said, I know how to decorate, and that's where I began. And that's where my story began, my entrepreneurial journey, and learning to believe in myself that I had something that the world needed. And I started that in event planning and decorating, which led to so many other things. Also led to me using my voice and speaking to other women, because in my journey, the hardest part was just believing in me, believing that I could do it. And I believe that stops so many of us because we don't believe it. We believe what was told to me. I believed that I was nothing. I believed that someone else had to control my mind because that was what I was told for over 17 years. So even though I was moving in my life, I was still stuck in that place where I believed I couldn't move. But once I started to move, once I started to believe that, yes, I have a voice, that enabled me to move into spaces that seemed off limits to me. And the more I believe that, the more doors that began to open, the more I began to connect with women and others that are in that same place that I was, and believing in myself. So I was on my way, so I thought, and of course, and then pandemic hit. And that business that I started that was in person, 99%, was all of a sudden going away. I had to figure out what I was going to go do. And so I was at a crossroads again. And I had to be willing to pivot, to learn new skills, or I didn't know what I was going to do. So at that point, I thought my dream was going to die. Instead, I decided to pivot. I decided to learn new things, do virtual events. And that's where my very first book came out of, because I learned to inspire myself by speaking words to myself and believing that I could step into those doors that was uncomfortable. And I had to step into those doors at that point. So I was on my way again, so I thought. And everything was lining up. New podcasts, new books, things were lining up and doing rather well. And then something else happened. And then something else happened. But what I learned is in each door that came open, each stumbling block that came open, as long as I stayed focused and believed that I could do it, then I could. I believe when you start telling yourself this is too hard, this is not where I'm supposed to be, that is where you stop. So even though challenges came, even though the pandemic came and caused another problem, even though as I was moving, I had to learn new things, and I continued to learn. And And actually, what I thought was the end was actually the beginning of something whole new thing.
So I love this. I wanted to unpack this slowly. And my goal for this podcast is usually to help folks, similar to my guests, do what the guests are able to do, right? Because someone like you is getting into decorating or something that's not traditionally super technical, that sort of thing. I'm sure there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people who want to follow in your footsteps. Let's take it one step at a time. Why don't we tell me about where the impetus to start the decorating company came from? What was what did you always love that allowed you to do this?
Well, before that, I was that person. Sometimes we have that person in our church. I was that person that helped decorate. I found a love for decorating early, just in my own life, decorating wreaths, decorating for family for Christmas. And then I started making bows and things for church co-workers and others. I was doing all this for free, of course, but I just loved it. I loved taking a space that looked like it was torn up, it looked like it just wasn't going to fit, and then turning it into something magical. I absolutely loved that. So when I knew I was supposed to start something, it had to be decorating. What I didn't know is that doing it for free was the easy part. And when you was trying to charge for it, it became a bit of a challenge. So it took some years to get adjusted to learning more and being able to charge people more, to believe in me that I could turn those visions. Another thing, John, I'll tell you I loved about decorating is just hearing people's thoughts. When I started talking to them and what they wanted, and then turning that vision into something they could walk into. And that's how everything began for me. It's just connecting with the people and bringing their vision to life.
How do you move from doing something that you love for free into having people pay for it? That's actually a thing that I'm sure that a lot of folks are concerned about, right?
Absolutely, because it's hard, right? Even family and friends, I was just doing all these wonderful events and not charging. Now, all of a sudden, it was a business, and it was how I needed to pay my bills, and it was scary, and it's not easy. What I had to do, and I had to make some mistakes along the way because I was still trying to help everybody. But what you have to do, and what I had to do, is get a process that I used on everybody, even if I knew them for a long time. And that was the only way to move through it. And honestly, the other thing that was big for me, I had to take my heart and my feelings and get comfortable with people who I loved not wanting to pay me for what I did. And even today, 26 years in, when I'm quoting somebody who I have a personal relationship with that I've had for a long time, you can feel uncomfortable when you start quoting prices. But if it's a business for you, you have to get comfortable with that and get comfortable with people who you love not wanting to pay you.
What does that process look like? I can imagine the process would be similar if you were a baker or if you were doing ceramics or whatever. What is that process? What kind of process did you make that somebody has to look at this contract, sign this contract, do a walkthrough? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Initially, what I decided to do, and I still do this in my business now, is I listen to what they want, right? I listen to what they want, and then I ask them, what is your budget for this? People don't like to say that. They like to scapegoat that question, but I ask it every single time at this point. Once I'm clear about the vision and what I can provide, I tell them that this is what I can do. This is what will bring your vision. I always lean into what is it that they want to come out of that event. Whether it's a business event and they have a financial goal, or it's a wedding and it's all about the romance and the social part of it. And then I paint that picture for them and I tell them how much it's going to cost to do that. Now, if that price comes out higher, because they always lowball on budget, they always do. So if that price comes out and they say, oh no, I can't do that, I give them some options. But sometimes that means them walking away. But the key is just being clear about what you can do, under promise and over deliver, so that they're excited about you and what you provide. And then they go tell others about. And that's how I got through it. It still was a challenge though, but I had to do it. I had to have it on paper. I had to know what I could offer on paper, not talking over my head, on paper, which was the key, is to making sure you're saying the same thing. You're being honest with what you can do for the amount of money that you're charging. And sometimes that's a yes, and sometimes that was enough.
So everything's got to be codified. Everything's got to be on paper. Everybody's got to be contracted out. That seems like the thing. I want you to go back to the 17-year-old Melissa Banks. And what would you tell her to get her to where you are now? Did you have to go through all that to get where you are? Or is there an easier way for folks? women in your position?
You know what? I believe that every single thing I went through, the physical abuse, medical challenges, some job challenges, loss in our family, all of that was necessary, because that 17-year-old Melissa would not be sitting here at 67 with the confidence that I have, regardless of what it looks like in my life. I can speak confidently. That person, if she had not went through those things, and knowing now that all those things was preparing me, all those things was necessary. And when I pray to God, and I do not lose faith, even if I'm getting a ton of no's, because I know that He took me through all of that, and He got me through all of that, and I was still standing, and I can still stand today and pour into others what He has poured into me. All of it was necessary. I believe that if you have faith and you lean into your faith, every single thing you're going through is necessary to get you to where you need to be.
How do you tell that woman who doesn't see that hope, who doesn't see that light at the end of the tunnel, who doesn't have that faith, right? I mean, it seems like faith might be wavering when it comes to that sort of thing. And plus, what you did was incredible, right? You built a business on something that you're doing, something that you love. How do you explain to somebody that this is all possible, aside from just being right in front of them and showing them?
You know what? I share with them what I do. What I do even now is, first of all, I get up every single day with affirmations. If you don't believe in affirmations, if you don't know what that is, get a great affirmation book. That's why my books are based on affirmations, because I believe what you speak into yourself, even if you're not believing it yet, you will eventually come to believe it. So right now, today, I start my day speaking life into me, that I am worthy, that I am enough, that I have everything I need to succeed, that God created me a masterpiece, created in His own image. I get up speaking those words with every authority that I have, and I believe them. And I say to you right now, speak those words over and over and over until you feel it in your gut and you believe it. And don't wait for everything to be perfect for you to take that step. Because what happens when you start believing in yourself, you will start moving, and you will take a step, and then you will take another step, and you will stumble, and forgive yourself for stumbling. Forgive yourself for making the wrong decision, and keep going. But keep pouring into you, keep believing into you, into your spirit, and keep surrounding yourself with people who pour positive influence into you, because that will be the key to your success.
Lovely. Tell me about your books.
My books are twofold, right? I have inspiration books, because I do believe what I'm speaking. I believe that if you pour positive in, positive comes out. So my inspiration books are just that, to give you some prompts, to push you, to encourage you when you need encouragement, to give you something to hold on to. Sometimes we can't remember those things because life is lifing, right? And all the noise is clouding us. But if you can pick up an inspiration book and remind you of all those things that you're here for, it can get you back on focus. But I also wanted to be able to pour into what I've learned over the last 26 years in my event planning career. I've learned so many things that can help people, whether you're trying to build a business or whether you just love event planning and planning events, but you get overwhelmed with all the details. So we have some of both books coming. But I tell you, John, coming in October is my first memoir. This book, I am telling my story, and it's been a healing process to even go through the process of writing it. And it's called The Life I Designed, because so many people go through things that they think that they can't design a great life or a life that they love. And I believe by sharing my story in that book, it's going to inspire and encourage others to believe in themselves and create a life that they love.
Say I'm again, let's go back to the baker, or I want to make sandwiches, or I want to run a food truck. What's my first step? What's the first step according to Melissa Banks?
Well, first of all, decide what you love. Decide what that looks like for you. Sometimes you may love to do bake, but you don't want to bake cakes. You just want to do cookies. That's your dream, is amazing cookies. And then learn what you do so that you can do it well. When I started decorating, I had already been decorating for many years as a number two. But when I decided to start in my business, I signed up for a decorating class because I wanted to know the skills. So develop your skills. Don't just wing it. Learn the industry, know what you're doing, and then just take the step. Don't sit down and keep writing out all these plans. Start. Decide, cookies is all I want to sell, and that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to get the training. I'm going to sign up for a class, and I'm going to take the first step to start.
How do you get the energy to do that? I can only imagine some folks who who want to change their lives might be too exhausted by just living in general, right? So you maybe have kids, you maybe have a mortgage that you're worried about. How do you get the energy, or how do you survive that brief period before something starts to move?
Well, the energy comes from the excitement. Let me just be real. The energy comes from the excitement. But what balances the energy, because what happens when you go 150 at the beginning and nothing is happening yet, you start fizzling out, right? So what you have to do, and what's absolutely necessary, is to have a plan. Have a weekly schedule, because if you do business 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you're going to burn out before you get to where you want to be. So start your week just like you do on your job or any other place. Start your week with a plan as to how much time you're going to work on that business, how much time you're going to work on yourself, and what it's going to take to do that. And when you manage that, and I know I can get carried away. Sometimes I get carried away, but every week I start with that plan. Actually, John, I start with a monthly plan. I do it monthly, and then I break it up weekly, and then I break it up daily. And then that makes it not seem so overwhelming. But you have to plan time for yourself, and you have to plan time that you're going to spend in your business and that family stuff that's so important to you. My mother's 91 years old, so I schedule time, because I want that time. I want to spend time with her. I don't want to work through her this season of her life and not spend quality time with her. So on my to-do list, on my calendar, is Thursdays at Mom's house. It's Tuesday afternoon, go by Mom's house, because that's what keeps you focused, and that what makes it all worthwhile.
If you've been so positive, I want to go just real quick to discuss maybe a lowest time in your life and how you got out of it. That's kind of the premise of the podcast anyway, but I think you'd have a pretty interesting story to tell.
I've had more than one lowest time in my life on this journey of 26 years of building a career. But I will take you back to when I first had to realize that I was a single parent. I had 2 young boys. I was broke, and we had no place to live. And I had to somehow think like an adult now, because for the last 17 years, someone's thought for me. So I was afraid. I was afraid that I would fail them. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to handle life on my own. And I had to lean into asking for help, which so many of us have a problem with. I had a problem with it too, but I knew I had to have help. So I found a place to live that was not a place that I wanted to live, but I made it a home for me and my boys for just a little while until I could get focused. And what helped me during that season, and I'll tell you, is one of the reasons I have journals now, is I started writing down what I wanted my life to look like, what I wanted my boys' life to look like. And as I began to write those things down, I started making little steps toward coming out of the darkness. I was praying every day. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is when you're praying and you're praying and you're praying and nothing seems to be changing. So I was starting things. It wasn't happening. I was looking for a place to stay. It wasn't happening. We didn't have beds. I needed somebody to donate beds to us, because we didn't have beds. Even once I found this apartment and cleaned it up, we still needed a place to sleep. I was praying during those seasons, but writing down how I felt and continuing to pray, even though I didn't see it. Now looking back, I know God was preparing me. He brought us from what I call my freedom night, and this a night I thought I was going to die, to finding the best job that I had ever had at that time. And I was still standing. I went from afraid to being able to speak to people I didn't know, which was a huge step for me at that time. And I will say to anybody, even when your season looks so dark, at night I laid on my pillow and cried because I didn't know what we were going to do the next day. God was still preparing me. And he was what I thought was silence, was him working it out on my behalf. And that's how you get out of it. No matter how it's looking, you don't falter, your faith doesn't whimper, and you don't stop moving every day.
Melissa, where should people find what you're working on? Where should people find your books?
You can find my books. You can find podcasts where I speak to women, and another podcast where I speak to men as well. And we talk about their journey and learn how people push through those things and they show up where they are today. And you can go to themelissabanks.com, and all of our links are right there. You can purchase our books there. You can join us on social media. All those links are in that one place, themelissabanks.com.
I like that your message is is one of hope, which I think that's vital. I think a lot of people are kind of hopeless right now. What's that aside from what you've already said, is there anything else that folks can use to feel hopeful?
Even on your lowest day, know that you are loved. Know that you are here on purpose, not by accident, and that your voice is here for someone to hear directly from you, and never stop believing in yourself.
Beautiful. It's wonderful. So the Melissa Banks, you have all your links there. I just spotted it. And you're still doing events, obviously, too. So if
Yes.
anybody needs an event, this is wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. It's been great.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.
I was so lost, pacing back and forth for 27 months. I wouldn't have known how to love myself if you didn't break my